to your phone. That's 10 to 10,000 people.
My name is John Masterson. I started Montana Normal in 1998. So I've been working to make marijuana legal for all responsible adults for 13 years now. When the Initiative 148 came along and in 2004, and we saw an opportunity to help a campaign make marijuana legal for some people, of course we were on board. But the final goal for Montana Normal is to have legal commerce and use and production, personal production of marijuana for all responsible adults. Until you cross the line and hurt someone or crash your car or don't go to work or that type of thing, but as soon as you're irresponsible, then I can't defend you. But if you want to be an adult and grow your own, use your own, and be a responsible grown, then that should be no business of government whatsoever. When this legislative session started, we actually had a legalization bill in the works, and we had a sponsor, and it would have set up what I think is a pretty reasonable system in which there would be commercial producers who would need to seek a license. They would be taxed based on their volume, with a higher tax for the bigger producers, and so the little guy has a chance, and licensed by the size of their facility and square footage, and the producers could sell to the retailers, and the retailers could sell to responsible adults. So it was, we thought it was a system that was modeled somewhat on beer and wine. Right now, anyone can brew their own beer or wine at home. You can't sell it, and of course you get in trouble if you drive drunk or do other stupid stuff. There were numerous bills in this legislature that attempted to regulate medical marijuana, and there was ups and downs, and I worked with a coalition of 20 to 30 people statewide, some of them registered lobbyists, some of them not, and some of them just citizen lobbyists, and we were watching the ebb and flow of politics, and we had some horrible defeats and some nice little victories along the way. But what finally popped out the other end is this horrible thing called SB423, and the blue sheet is the text of a summary that I wrote about 2 weeks ago, and so I won't read it to you, but I'll hit a couple of highlights. It affects, the whole bill affects patients, caregivers, and doctors in real and serious ways. For patients that are registered under the provision for chronic pain, right now you go to any doctor, including some clinic doctor that's never met you before, and you say, I've got pain, and you describe it, and the doctor evaluates whether or not you do indeed suffer from chronic pain, and signs your recommendation and says that marijuana will be more harm than good. That is out the window. Now, if you're diagnosed with severe chronic pain, there are two ways to get registered. The first way is to have two doctors both sign off. That both must perform a full physical exam. So you can either get the two doctors that both must perform a full physical exam, or you can go to one doctor who must be your real doctor, like the one who has been seeing you for your condition for a long time. That doctor must generate objective proof of your severe chronic pain, and the chronic pain must be ongoing, severe, and persistent, and of severe intensity. And you must show either an X-ray or an MRI or some other objective test that points that here's the cause for this horrible pain. Now, many people, of course, they have a pain from an old injury, but they've not been going to the doctor ongoing, and so that's going to be a problem for many patients. Interestingly, this law does allow you to grow more plants. 12 must be seedlings, and 4 may be mature flowering plants, but you can still possess 1 ounce. People on probation or parole will no longer be eligible. Here's an interesting one. Gardens may not be combined or shared, and so you might have the idea that, well, and I'll get to this part, but nobody can sell to each other. There's no selling at all, and so let's just get together as patients and help each other grow this plant, like you might grow tomatoes with your neighbors. That's illegal under this provision. That prohibits the sharing of space or the use by any other person of your space to grow someone else's plants. If you are convicted of a DUI, you must hand over your medical marijuana card, even if it has nothing to do with a DUI. caregivers, I think there's some of the most onerous restrictions are on the caregivers, because the caregivers are all put out of business. They don't exist anymore. You can only grow for up to 3 patients, and only if you want to go as many as 3, then you have to, 2 of them need to be related to you. Anyone who wants to be a provider, they don't call them caregivers anymore. Anyone who wants to be a provider will need to grow someone else's plants. If you are convicted of a DUI, you must hand over your medical marijuana card, even if it has nothing to do with a DUI. So, caregivers, I think there's some of the most onerous restrictions are on the caregivers, because the caregivers are all put out of business. They don't exist anymore. You can only grow for up to 3 patients, and only if you want to go as many as 3, then you have to, 2 of them need to be related to you. Anyone who wants to be a provider, they don't call them caregivers anymore. Anyone who wants to be a provider will need to submit their fingerprints and subject themselves to a credit check. The fingerprints will be sent to the FBI, interesting, a federal law enforcement agency, with an application that says this person wants to grow marijuana. So that doesn't seem logical to me. I'm not sure how many providers will decide to go ahead with that. Also, there's the financial background check, which makes it so that if you have unpaid student loans, or you ditched on your last car loan, or some other like little black mark in your credit history, that will also be grounds for having your application turned down. For the caregivers who are currently in business and hoping to register under this new program, they figure, hey, my FBI background check is clean, my credit check is clean, I'm gonna register. But if you do get rejected for any reason, or if you decide not to register at all, those of you who are in business right now will need on June 30th to pack up all your plants and products and bring them to the sheriff's office for destruction.
Unless you give it all away.
Unless you give it all away, that's right. There will be a separate registration for a marijuana-infused products manufacturer, and so that opens up a new business opportunity. Oh, except that no commerce may occur. No one can sell anything to anyone. There can be no transaction of anything of value in exchange for marijuana or marijuana products.
What other business does that?
There are none.
Exactly.
It's absurd. If you do decide to get your license as an infused products manufacturer, you have to make sure not to use your pots and pans that you cook regular human food with. You have to have separate pots and pans, or else that's a violation of the law, because your edibles pots and pans have pot cooties, and so you couldn't possibly mingle the 2 stainless steel cookware sets. Anyone who does register as a caregiver or a provider under the new program, the law enforcement will be automatically notified of your garden location. You're required to register it, and additionally, the law enforcement may make unannounced inspections to ensure you are compliant at any time between 8 and 6, Monday to Friday. Again, the provider gardens cannot be shared, or any commingling of plants. They have to all be separate. When law enforcement does come on one of these unannounced inspections, you must surrender upon demand your full records of your plants, your product, who you've sold to, when. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't sell anything. No. You must have your full records of these transfers, of these free transfers of marijuana up to 3 patients. HIPAA, it's really arguable whether HIPAA is relevant at all, because that's a federal law. Montana law has a similar corollary, and that might be grounds for legal action, and I'll get to that in a minute. Advertising of any kind becomes illegal next Friday. Not July 1st, but next Friday. Yeah, Friday the 13th, exactly. And that includes electronic media. And so there's some question about whether caregivers who currently have websites or email their friends and any magazine, certainly magazines become illegal if they have any advertising. I mean, I suppose you could put out a magazine and give it away. But you certainly can't sell advertising, because no one's allowed to buy advertising. It would be a crime to advertise your business. But of course, why would you advertise your business? Because you don't have a business, because all you're doing is giving it away. Now, there are some people who are already figuring out workarounds that should this become law, and I'm confident that it's not, due to what I'll talk about in a minute. But there are people talking about workarounds, such as selling people mason jars, selling people baggies, selling people a high delivery fee, perhaps. Other ways, because what is prohibited is receiving any sort of compensation of anything of value for marijuana or marijuana-infused products. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not advising anyone to try and work that loophole, but there are people who are starting to think this way in case this becomes law. The final category of people that are involved currently with the medical marijuana program that are going to be impacted is the doctors. And this is sort of a circle, right? Like, if you impact the doctors, you impact the patients, and you impact the caregivers. So it all goes round and round as a system. The doctors will, if this becomes law, will be required not just to sign sort of a check mark that says, this patient suffers from a qualifying condition, and we believe, me as a doctor, I believe that this patient will be benefited more than harmed by the medical use of marijuana. Now, instead, the doctor must confirm that they have assumed primary medical responsibility for caring for the patient. They must describe the range of medications and other therapies that have been used. They must confirm that they've reviewed all of these, including supplements, and considered their possible interaction with marijuana. Now, vitamin B plus pot, I don't know. They must confirm that they've explained the potential risks. They may not affiliate in any way with providers. They may not offer a discount or incentive for a patient to work with a certain provider. And here's the big one. If they sign more than 25 recommendations in a year, they will be reported to the Board of Vet Medical Examiners. The Board of Vet Medical Examiners is thereupon directed to launch an investigation to find out whether this doctor really is the primary doctor, the doctor for all 25 patients. And if they have a bona fide, true professional relationship and have done everything they said they've done.
At the doctor's expense.
At the doctor's expense. So that's the other side of it. And how much that's going to cost is a complete unknown. But I mean, suppose the Board of Medical Examiners says it's a $5,000 investigation. Then how many doctors are ever going to sign more than 25? You simply may not talk over a webcam and provide a recommendation. There has to be a full physical exam. Finally, there's going to be a hotline for suspected abuses, in which any member of the public may call the hotline and say, someone's smoking pot. And then the DPHHS will run the hotline with the Department of Health and Human Services. And they have the option of handing out to law enforcement. So, all said, the SB423 pretty much demolishes the program as we know right now. It certainly demolishes the industry without some very creative thinking and some pretty horrible legal risks. So what's next? What's next is a three-pronged strategy, and I understand we'll hear more about part of that strategy. But the first part is the governor still has 8 days to veto. Veto would sort of solve this problem. Now, if he does veto, and I don't know if you've heard, but there was a polite protest outside an event that the governor attended this morning up in Whitefish, and there was about 350 people there who stood there relatively politely and held signs that said, "Please veto 423," and so forth. And so the pressure is ongoing, and if you've not yet contacted the governor and asked politely to veto 423, please do so now. Not now, but tonight, please do so, or tomorrow, and tell all your friends too also. It's possible that we could create enough pressure on them that they'll elect to veto it. I'm not going to call it likely right now, but we've got to keep up the pressure because that would remove the requirement of the other two prongs of the strategy, and which are difficult and expensive. So, if he does veto, then what happens next is the legislature does get one more chance to try to override his veto. They need a supermajority in both houses in order to do so. So the Secretary of State will send out a survey to all of the legislators, and it'll be a couple of months maybe. It's unclear. I'm not sure that's defined by the law or rule. I don't know for sure, but we think that there's enough Democrats, at least in the Senate, that we could get to who voted yes on it prior, because they